Yo, what up guys, it's Kev. In Season 6, we found out Jon's true parents, and in Season 7, we found out that Rhaegar had annulled his marriage to Elia Martell, so Jon's given name was Aegon Targaryen. That scene's a big misdirect though, and it also has a hidden meaning. We're going to analyze that in the next two videos, one where we go over the evidence that the Night King's name is Jon Snow. In that video, we are going to briefly mention Bael the Bard's bastard, so I figured it'd be good to refresh you on the Bael the Bard story. It's a song about a king stealing the most beautiful flower in Winterfell's gardens, but as usual, the word flower is a metaphor for the Stark girl. Ring any bells? Lyanna Stark, who loved the blue winter rose, implying that Bael is Rhaegar. And it's also worth noting that Jon and his brother of the Night's Watch, Stone Snake, they know a different story than Ygritte, which shouldn't come as a shocker. Songs are often changed by the winning side. So the people north of the wall know one story, and the people south of the wall know another story. This could be because Mance Rayder was the infamous raider Bael the Bard, or because the original Bael the Bard was the Night King's father, stealing a Stark girl and giving birth to a bastard named Jon Snow, who eventually became the 13th Lord Commander, the Night's King, the last hero, and the show Night King. But like I said earlier, we're going to go over that in the next two videos, so hit subscribe. The rest of this is just a reading from the series A Song of Ice and Fire by George R.R. Martin, so you can hear the full story instead of just the bullet points. Without further ado, here's the story of Bael the Bard told from Ygritte to Jon. Bael the Bard made it, said Ygritte. He was king beyond the wall, a long time back. All the free folk know his songs, but might be you don't sing them in the south. Brave black crow, she mocked. Well, long before he was king over the free folk, Bael was a great raider. Stone Snake gave a snort. A murderer, robber, and raper is what you mean. That's all in where you're standing too, Ygritte said. The Stark in Winterfell wanted Bael's head, but never could take him, and the taste of failure galled him. One day in his bitterness, he called Bael a craven who preyed on only the weak. When word of that got back, Bael vowed to teach the Lord a lesson. So he scaled the wall, skipped down the King's Road, walked into Winterfell one winter's night with harp in hand, naming himself Sigurd of Skagos. Sigurd means deceiver in the old tongue that the first men spoke, and the giants still speak. North or south, singers always find a ready welcome, so Bael ate at Lord Stark's own table and played for the Lord in his high seat until half the night was gone. The old songs he played, and new ones he'd made himself, and he played and sang so well that when he was done, the Lord offered him to let him name his own reward. All I ask is a flower, Bael answered, the fairest flower that blooms in the gardens of Winterfell. Now, as it happened, the winter roses had only come into bloom, and no flower is so rare nor so precious. So the Stark sent his glass gardens and commanded that the most beautiful of the winter roses be plucked for the singer's payment, and so it was done. But when morning came, the singer had vanished, and so had Lord Brandon's maiden daughter. Her bed they found empty, but for the pale blue rose that Bael had left on the pillow where her head had lain. Jon had never heard this tale before. Which Brandon was this supposed to be? Brandon the Builder lived in the Age of Heroes, thousands of years before Bael. There was Brandon the Burner, and his father Brandon the Shipwright, but this was Brandon the Daughterless, Ygritte said sharply. Would you hear the tale or no? Jon scowled. Go on. Lord Brandon had no other children. At his behest, the Black Crows flew north from their castles in the hundreds, but nowhere could they find any signs of Bael or this maid. For most of a year, they searched, till the Lord lost heart and took to his bed, and it seemed as though the line of Starks was at its end. But one night, as he lay waiting to die, Lord Brandon heard a child's cry. He followed the sound and found his daughter back in her bedchamber, asleep with a babe at her breast. Bael had brought her back? No. They had been in Winterfell all the time, hiding with the dead beneath the castle. The maid loved Bael so dearly she bore him a son, the songs say. Though, if truth be told, all the maids loved Bael in them songs he wrote. Be that as it may, what's certain is that Bael left the child in payment for the rose he'd plucked unasked. And that boy grew to be the next Lord Stark. So there it is. You have Bael's blood in you, same as me. It never happened, Jon said. She shrugged. Might be it did, might be it didn't. It's a good song though. My mother used to sing it with me. She was a woman too, Jon Snow. Like yours. She rubbed her throat where his dirk had cut her. The song ends when they find the babe, but there is a darker end to the story. 30 years later, when Bael was king beyond the wall and led the free folk south, it was young Lord Stark who met him at the frozen ford, and killed him. For Bael would not harm his own son when they met sword to sword. So the son slew the father instead, said Jon. Aye, she said. but the gods hate kinslayers, even when they kill unknowing. When Lord Stark returned from the battle and his mother saw Bael's head upon his spear, she threw herself from a tower in her grief. Her son did not long outlive her. One of his lords peeled the skin off him and wore him for a cloak. Your Bael was a liar, he told her, certain now. No, Ygritte said, but a bard's truth is different than yours and mine. Anyway, you asked for the story, so I told it. She turned away from him, closed her eyes, and seemed asleep. Alright, that's it guys. This story is very important. Like I said, we'll include it in next week's video analysis on why the Night King's name is probably Jon Snow. But let me leave you on this. Keep in mind 4 things. During the long night, the River Royne froze all the way down to the Salhoro, which is basically the same latitude as Dorne. Sir Arthur Dayne's sword was called Dawn. Dorne kind of sounds like Dawn, and some people believe that not only was Mance Rayder Rhaegar, but his friend, Qhorin Halfhand, was Sir Arthur Dayne. Of course, this kind of stuff would only be book only since we did see Dayne die in the show. But check this out. The very next line in the books, after Ygritte finishes the story to Jon, is this. Dawn and Qhorin Halfhand arrive together.